The figure of an interpreter, meant as a person who translates from a language into another, has existed since the times of ancient Egypt. Professionally talking, the figure who mediated between two different cultures was very different from the figure of today's interpreter. Ancient interpreters were ordinary people who knew, not necessarily because they had studied it, two or more languages, and for that reason this job was handed down father to son. With the gradual interaction between different populations, the figure of a mediator was more and more necessary, and interpreters were requested even in ancient Greece and in the Roman Empire. To spread Christianism, sermons in Latin were translated orally in the local language, sentence by sentence. Interpreters were used in the discovery of the New World to conquer and subdue the Native American populations. With the end of the First World War and the Paris Peace Conference, the figure of the interpreter became of paramount importance, and the consecutive translation was born. After that, the Nuremberg trials put an end to the Second World War, and also thanks to the new audio technologies, the simultaneous translation was born. Nowadays, the role of a professional interpreter has radically changed. An interpreter is a person who has dedicated its life to the study of foreign languages, but not only that. In fact, an interpreter must have a good knowledge of cultures and customs and tradition of a population in order to carry out the job in the best way possible. In fact, not only does the interpreter have to translate from one language to another, he also has to faithfully restate the exact meaning intended by the original speaker. An interpreter must have good linguistic skills, must have great translation abilities, must have good knowledge of the various cultures, must have good communication skills, and last but not least, must be able to use in the best way possible all the technological tools in support to his personal preparation. Today, language interpretation is widely used in many formal and informal working environments, and we can identify four different kinds of it: consecutive interpreting, simultaneous interpreting, community interpreting, and whisper translation. What we have said about interpreters in today's world cannot be said for those who work side by side with foreign armies in conflict zones. Since the beginning of the new millennium, many wars have broken out, especially in the Middle East, and because of that, the need of a person who could mediate between the two parties have become of crucial importance. War interpreters are ordinary people who volunteer themselves to help foreign armies in their country with the hope to bring back peace and prosperity. These people are hired as professionals, but in the vast majority of cases they have not studied the language requested by their employers. They are self-taught. Not surprisingly, very often communication between the two parties is very difficult, slow, and not clear. War interpreters actively participate in missions because they can establish a connection with local people and with the chiefs of villages. Given their contacts with foreign forces, interpreters are considered traitors by their country, and they are constantly threatened with death by Talibans. Unfortunately, once troops are retreated, interpreters are left to their fate, and they have to face the concrete risk of being killed. Escaping is almost impossible since the costs for the journey are extremely high. Their home country does not want to establish protection programs to help them, and interpreters are forced to live hidden with the fear of being killed or seeing their family tortured. In conflict zones, there is a similar figure to the interpreter's one that needs to be mentioned, and it is the fixer. A fixer is a sort of contact for a foreign journalist who wants to shoot a report in a conflict area unknown to him. A fixer is a local who knows the language and who can collect all information needed by the journalist. So, a fixer is a guide, a driver, an interpreter, and a colleague who knows the area and knows what to do if the situation gets dangerous. As for interpreters, also fixers, once they have done their job, they are left to their fate. In order to solve this problem, countries who have retreated their armies, abandoning interpreters, have decided to launch special programs which aim at helping interpreters and their families so that they can leave their home country to start a better life. One of the programs is called Special Immigrant Visa, a special program launched by the United States, and it aims at providing visas for interpreters and their families so that they can live there safely. This ambitious program is not able to keep up with the huge number of demands. The procedure to join the program is very long and complex, and too often interpreters remain stuck in bureaucracy and they end up with the refusal of the visa. Anyway, during the last years, a lot has been done to simplify bureaucracy to help the greatest number of families possible. As we can understand, war interpreters play a key role for the survival of the soldiers. But when it comes to their protection, they are not considered as important as other figures on the battlefield as journalists or war photographers. Interpreters are not considered professionals, and they are not specifically mentioned in international documents, but they are included in other existing categories. In order to help war interpreters in trouble, many associations have been established to help them in any way possible. Red Tea wants to raise awareness on the difficult situation war interpreters have to face in their home country. NoOneLeft.org have been founded by a former CIA agent who worked in Afghanistan and an Afghan interpreter, and it aims at helping interpreters and families who arrive in the US. Lastly, the University of Geneva, in particular the Faculty of Interpreting and Translation, has created a portal on the university's website which aims at educating those who want to work as interpreters in conflict zones.